to Change, sponsored by the Barn of Schaumburg, where friendly peers, nutritious meals, and social activities are available during the week under the friendly guidance of Marina Lvovich. My name is Rosemary Colbert. I'm married to Dennis for 26 years, and we've lived in Schaumburg for 29, and we love living here. Now I'd like our guests to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Donna Mullen. I still am a registered nurse. I renew my license, and I've lived in the metropolitan Chicago area since 1960. That was the year I married and I moved to Chicago. Previous to that, I spent 4 years in school, in school away from home. But previous to that, I lived on a farm in Minnesota. The interesting thing about that is when I was born, that was before rural electricity. So there was no pumps or anything. We had kerosene lights, and water was pumped like, you primed the pump by little, then you could get your water. And it was, like my friends now tell me when I talk about it, you sound like Laura Ingalls Wilder. Well, there was some similarities, because much of even our food, it was grown locally, and some things you just didn't get. Like when bananas came to town, my mother got excited. Bananas, grapes, because they weren't always distributed in these small rural areas. For medical care, we went miles. We were lucky, we went to the Mayo Clinic, but still we went miles to get to 80 miles. So it was a much different lifestyle. And of course, even now that has all changed. Once the rural electrification came in, it was all different.
I think a lot of that was during FDR when he had.
It was the end of it, and then World War II came, and that put a halt on what you could buy.
That joined the whole country with electricity and stuff.
He did that, and then Eisenhower did the roads, and away we went.
Right. And now we'll meet Laura.
I'm Laura Sapoznik. I was born and raised in Chicago. And in ultimate times, I moved to Schaumburg about 35 years ago. But I basically lived in Chicago the rest of my life. And I didn't have those experiences. Of course, I didn't have a telephone. That when it did come, it was in party lines.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
That was not nice. But basically, that's where I am from.
And you lived in Chicago, so you had most of the amenities that she didn't have.
Exactly.
And how about you, Mary?
My name is Mary Ellen McLean. I was born and raised also in Chicago. I was born in 1944. My last job was a court clerk in the Circuit Court of Cook County. And I moved out to Schaumburg when I retired in 2018.
Oh, so
I lived with my son-in-law's mother. And I lived next door to my daughter and son-in-law. It was their goal to buy the house next door to them and move us both in there.
So you just moved out here?
I just moved out here.
Well, welcome to the
community.
And I
love Schaumburg. It's such a different place.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's such a different place in Chicago.
It's the best place for us old people.
Yes. It's a wonderful place because
Hold it.
For everybody, but especially for us. Yes.
For old people, I don't consider myself old.
No, we're not old yet.
I acknowledge it.
And the barn is a wonderful place to go to. That's what got me out of the house and got me back into society.
And Marina's doing everything she can to get people to participate in coming to the barn.
I'm a kind of a people watcher, so I sit alone a lot, and somebody will come and sit by me.
Friendly peers. That was the introduction. Yes. Well, today our subject is about occupations, and of course, you have to be a fascinating occupation coming from Minnesota in the boondocks.
Well, I left when I was 17 to go to school.
Where did you go to school?
Well, now it's called Viterbo College, but then University of Viterbo, actually, in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And I'm going up this August for a reunion, 60 years of my nursing program.
And that was your occupation?
Yes, I worked in nursing, not much hospital nursing, which I found was very difficult, and I didn't like it for a lot of reasons. But always in nursing or nursing jobs.
So right from beginning to end, you worked in nursing?
Well, yes. My very last job was, I worked 31 years for the Department of Mental Health in Illinois. Oh. And I did different things with them, from being training other technicians was the beginning, and then I worked in grant and aid, which was money, and then there was a massive reorganization, and from money I went to forensics in Elgin.
Wow.
That was a very difficult job.
And what was
forensics were patients that were admitted to the forensic program because they had committed a crime and they were found unfit to stand trial or not guilty by reason of insanity. That was my last 16 years of working.
So now my
Got a regular
question
job.
to you is, what made you decide to be, was that foregone conclusion that this is what you wanted to do?
Absolutely not. I was in a small class in high school. It was a Catholic girls' school, and two of my friends were going to be nurses, and a couple of them were going to be teachers and go to the same school, so I went with them. It was just
And that's how
my
you
little group.
became a
Yeah, and I
nurse.
chose nursing. One of them chose home economics, and
Well, you did. You made a good choice because you had.
yeah.
Sounds
And
like you
the
had
nursing people all graduated. All the others dropped out for various reasons. I don't always recall.
And nursing, you can take every place.
You can.
Yeah. And how about you, Laura? What was your? How did you choose your first job, and how old were you?
Well, when I was 3, I decided I wanted some candy, and I went into the delicatessen that was around the corner, and I sang.
Oh my, you're.
They gave me candy, and I learned that you can. I sang for my supper,
Right.
and so that's how I ended up being a singer. But
I would have starved.
no, I had a good voice.
I know.
Well, see,
you
now we
are.
never knew that about you. I've
interesting,
never
yeah.
heard you sing. You'll have to sing at the barn.
You should. Yeah.
We'd like you to do that, sure.
I am 89 years old now.
Yes.
What I used to be is, do you know coloratura?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Well, tell us what that is.
That is the highest you can go. And I
Okay.
could break glass by singing certain notes. And in the when I went to parties, they wanted me to sing, but they sent me to the other room. They were afraid of what would
Depending on what
happen.
kind of glass, of course. If it's a mug, it isn't going to happen, right?
And so that's how I started. And since my teenage years, I did a couple of interesting things. One, do you remember Paul Whiteman?
Yes.
Well, I sang on his show when I was 16 from New York.
Wow.
In Chicago, do you remember the Bewitched show?
Bewitched was the one with, what's her name, the actress?
Yes.
Yeah.
Her first husband. He and I worked on a show for Junior Junction.
And who was her husband?
Oh, God.
Oh, I shouldn't ask because with our memory, right, but
Yeah.
the audience will remember exactly.
And so that
Barbara
was-
Eden and whoever else
Oh,
it
yes,
was.
I
Yeah.
couldn't
But
even
he
think
was
of
the
that.
first one.
Right.
So I worked with him. And then when I was 18, I ended up graduating high school before, and I went to college, and then it turned out that I was studying at DePaul, and my brother walked in, and I said to myself, why is he here? It turned out that he talked to the priest, and it turned out that my father had died.
Oh,
So I left. And so then within the week or two after, I heard about auditions for St. Louis Muni Opera. I didn't know whether to go or not, and people said, do it. So I ended up being there for 2 seasons. We did 11 shows in 12 weeks. I'm talking full assortments, hundreds of people.
And did you do that was that your occupation until you retired, or what did you?
Oh, no,
No?
no. Singing was only until I was in my 20s. I sang, and later, I sang at different functions, things like that. And I ended up I wanted theater, so it turns out that I found the best thing next to it. I became a salesperson.
For who?
Oh,
I mean, if you're in music. What did you sell? Sheet music?
no, I sold everything under the sun. I did demonstrations for 50 years. I did flea markets for 30 years. I can go on.
Well, you know, that's remarkable because it was at a time when men were the salesmen
Yeah.
and, you know, women maybe sold gloves at Macy's or something.
No,
But you were selling.
I sold products.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up selling for 13 years for Estee Lauder perfumes.
Oh, okay. Now that we're familiar with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was
And when
fun.
did you become an usher?
Oh, I became an usher about 40 years ago.
So it's been a long
I
time.
started at Chicago Theater. From there, I heard about the Saints, and I joined the Saints, and I've been there for a long time. I am a coordinator. Do you know what that is? It's getting the ushers for theaters. So it's this group of 2,200 people.
Oh, my.
I can get ushers for 3 theaters that I work with.
And which 3 are they?
I am doing Oil Lamp, which is in Glenview. A wonderful, wonderful
Is
theater.
that a new one?
No,
No,
it's
it's been a
been,
while.
they've been there for a couple of years. And I do in Oak Park, the Oak Park Festivals. And then I have a show in Chicago, which is really not the best
And
one.
you are in Broadway on Chicago? You usher for?
I don't usher for Broadway in Chicago. I belong to the series,
Oh, okay. Okay.
which I
Right.
been
Right.
there since the beginning, and they work with me. And seeing as I'm not capable of doing stairs and stuff, I am doing.
You're right. Right. And how about you, Mary Ellen?
Now, I got married when I was 18, right out of high school, and I was a stay-at-home mom all the way up until I think I was 49 when I started my job. So I was a
Wow.
late bloomer.
And what did you do?
I
when
was
you
a
sta-
court clerk in the circuit court of Cook County.
Oh my God! So you work for the Department of
Mental Health, yeah,
Health
Human
in
Services.
Chicago, and you worked
For
in
the
this
clerk of the circuit court
Yeah,
in Cook County. I
so-
worked downtown in the Daily Center.
And I didn't work for government.
That's all right. You start out in the offices and you learn, you do the ropes, you do all different kinds, answer phones. I was at information, you do data entry. I worked in the front office answering phones. And then you're slowly progress and then you're put up in the courtrooms, which was, I absolutely loved my job.
And the courtrooms were downtown.
In the Daily Center.
And now, how did you get there?
Well, I lived in Chicago, so I
and then-
actually
that's why you stayed in Chicago.
I
and-
stayed in
okay.
Chicago. Well, I didn't really have an option to come out to
Right,
Schaumburg at
right,
that time.
right.
I got divorced shortly after I got the job, so it was a
Oh,
lifesaver for me.
Yes.
And I absolutely loved it. I worked for some wonderful judges. I worked in the law division, and that is civil action lawsuits over $30,000. And I worked in the commercial calendar, and that is just about money. It's not, I didn't have any dead baby cases or medical malpractice cases. That's in law division also. But we handled just money action cases and things like that.
People suing people.
People suing people, companies suing people, things like that. So it was a very interesting job, and I didn't have to think about the medical malpractice, cases, which can be
Right.
devastating.
Yes, yes, and yes. Now, you went to college?
No.
No, you didn't
Got
go-
married right out of high school, 18 years
Right
old,
out
stayed
of-
at home all those years until I got this job.
So, how did you select your job?
Well, my husband knew somebody that worked there, and there was, openings open. So I went down, applied, I took a test, and then I started then.
Well, when I was young, my first job was as a sales lady, if you want to call it lady. I was 15. I had to fake my birth certificate because you had to be 16 in Chicago when you got your job.
I did a lot of volunteering when I was married too. The church, PTA, different
so you
organizations.
had different kinds of jobs.
Yeah, they just
except-
weren't paid.
Right, right.
I was volunteering for 45 years.
Yeah.
I've done different organizations, and at this moment, I'm doing theater, and I'm now doing Traveler's Aid.
Oh, yeah, she's going to go work at O'Hare Airport. I've always wanted to do that, but it's getting there and back. I'm
Oh, I
such
don't
a
mind it.
coward. I know, but I'm such a coward, but I would love to do that. I've had people ask me, why don't I come and do that? And it's you help the travelers, it's you
Yeah.
work in the airport. But what I was going to say is that when I was, probably when you guys were growing up too, do you remember F.W. Woolworths when they used to
Oh,
have
yes.
the
Oh, yeah.
sales ladies all
Sure.
behind
Yeah.
every counter, and you had to use the cash register?
Yes.
That was pre-community. I think Community Discount was the first one that came out with the centralized cash register. Because prior to that, I remember my girlfriend worked at a clothing store, and they had the salespeople, walking around and helping people, make their selections and everything, and then. There was no such thing as
Do it yourself.
Everything was, they had to help you. You had to help them do that, and then all of a sudden, everything changed as we got older. Everything changed. Did you notice that in your occupations, how things changed over the years?
Well, I went from being at 15, I was a cashier for shoe stores. So for 6 years, I worked under 12 managers and in 6 locations.
Do we recognize the shoe stores?
Burt's at that time.
Oh, because I'm thinking of Chernins and Mailings
Chernins,
and Florsheim and how
Well,
many?
no, they were downtown and they were all over. And I ended up starting as a cashier at 50 cents an hour. And
That's what I made.
And then I ended up being payroll and everything under the sun in the location. And then when I left and I saw the general manager later, he says, "Laura, come back." I says, "You can't afford me now."
Well, if you had to change anything, what would you change about what you did?
I would have gone to New York.
Really?
Actually, after I did St. Louis, I really, everybody was going New York and stuff. I really wanted to go. But my mother was dying, so I had to come home.
Oh.
And before she died, she wanted to be married. So I did that. So
How long were you married?
for 55 years, I knew him at 13. And so I would have been married at this point. He died in 06. So think of what
And how long were you married, Mary Ellen?
I think 34 years, 32 years.
And then you got
we
divorced?
got divorced. And I think what I would do differently, I would have worked when before.
When your kids were younger?
Yeah, I would have started working as soon as I got married. Because I was 18 when I got married.
There's pros and cons. In other words, you would have worked for a while before you had your
Well,
children?
if I could do it all over again, I'd do a lot different. You can't go back.
Well-
But I think I really enjoyed working. I think I would have been better off if I
You like the
worked.
business world
I
rather
did,
than being
yeah,
at home.
yeah.
And see, when I had my second baby, I decided to stay home. My boss asked me to come back because I used to be a secretary. And as poor as we were, I thought, no, I'm not going to work. I guess I was just too lazy. I wanted to be home, whatever. But, because it is harder for people to work now because
Well, they didn't like schools. They still came home for lunch.
Yeah.
They didn't. We didn't really have anywhere to put them then either.
yeah.
But I think it's a different world now than it was
Well,
back
now
Women
when you
were-
work, now,
Yeah.
I mean, the mothers have their babies, and now they get, maybe
Oh, yeah.
6 weeks if they're
Yes,
lucky.
they do.
And then you have child care, which is another whole new occupation that we didn't have when we were young. You asked one of your relatives to babysit.
And I had no relatives to babysit.
No.
I had 4 children ultimately, but I ended up having a sick husband who was sick for 40 years.
Oh,
So I was working,
so you were the breadwinner.
basically. He worked. I refused to let him totally
Right,
vegetate
right,
till near the
right.
end. He literally wore the color out of the chair he was sitting on. So I ended up and he said if it weren't be for me, we'd have nothing.
Right,
So
right.
thank goodness I was a good manager.
He could not do any volunteering. Did he do any volunteering with
No,
you?
he couldn't. He couldn't stand. He couldn't
right.
do things.
Oh,
So
okay.
he actually worked, But as I said, he got to a point where I allowed him to retire at 62 and a half.
Yeah, well, that helps, and it helps to have Social Security, right?
Well, it also helped for the insurance
Yes.
because he was on medicine so much.
Yes,
He was in
yes.
and out of the hospital so much.
So you had to work, and how about you? How about you, Donna?
Well, I was just thinking of options when I moved to Chicago. My option was working in a hospital as a nurse, because in the classified ads of Tribune, pages and pages and pages, started out men wanted and then women wanted, and women jobs were always, maybe some professional jobs. They wanted a few nurses here and there, but they were the menial jobs,
Yes,
or clerical
secretaries,
jobs.
clerical, right.
But the good jobs, like the good sales jobs, which I certainly felt capable of doing, they weren't open to me. And I tried interviewing, and they were like, whoa.
And I actually went applied for jobs, and they said, we're not going to hire you because you're just going to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And
When
you
I
know
was
something?
younger.
I ended up getting jobs in the Apparel Center and Merchandise Mart. I ran showrooms there.
Oh, well, I just saw a movie the other day about this woman who wanted to be a writer. And when she submitted her article, her book, the outline, they told her, oh, you have to be a man. And this was in New York, at the turn of the last century.
Well, there was a movie with that theme recently.
Oh, there.
Yeah.
But you know something? It got to the point where I was dealing with men so much that I knew how to handle it.
Well, Laura, they say behind every good man is a good woman. So whatever our abilities were, job-wise, we made the men shine, right?
I proved to them that I knew more than they, and I could do more than they could.
Right.
But I don't think the opportunities were there for most women. They really were
No,
not.
they weren't.
And even now, with some child care, and I guess there's some subsidized child care, it's still very
Very
expensive.
expensive, yes.
My grandson pays $700 a month
Yeah.
for child care.
Ooh, that was used to be our mortgages.
Well, I know, and that isn't full time either. I think he drops them off. I don't know the exact hours and days, but it could go up to $1,100 if he was there
Right,
for
right.
like the 10 hours that many children need to be there, and he's not quite 3.
Right.
And they won't take him, many centers won't take him unless they're trained.
Right.
Well, that eliminates a whole age group.
Right.
And then there's these at-home babies, women who take in who take in extra kids,
Right.
and working in where I did in hospitals, I worked always with a lot of women, and I heard horror stories about poor daycare.
Oh, yeah, I agree. You've read them, too.
Yeah, and women who would take in 13 children,
Yeah.
and many of them were preschools. They were not getting good care.
No.
They were not getting any. But to get good daycare now
Right.
is very pricey.
Yes, it is.
And my daughter, who is 67, is babysitting her grandson.
And that is another occupation that is very current now, is a lot of the grandparents. Well, of course, they have to because it is so. And, of course, you trust your grandparents more than you would trust a stranger. But what about your children now? How has it changed for them? Do you know? I mean, did they follow in your footsteps or?
Not mine.
None of you?
My
No?
sons when one son went into the service. My other son, I had 2 sons and a daughter. My other son joined the Secret Service and went to Washington.
Oh, see, now that's
But
interesting.
then he got offered, his father was a policeman, Chicago policeman, so when they offered, he was on a list, and when his name came on the list, he came back to Chicago and became a Chicago policeman. When my other son came back, he also went on the Chicago Police Department.
Are they still?
Yes. My oldest son actually just made lieutenant.
Oh, wow, very
So,
good.
and my other son works gun cases, when guns are involved,
Right,
in police
right.
shootings. He does that. My daughter, she is a something food consultant at the nursing homes.
That's another new
Dietitian?
occupation
Yes.
that is a current, but that wasn't around when we were young.
And I think she first
They didn't
started.
know about diets.
They didn't. Well,
No.
not only that, they didn't have retirement homes.
Right.
That's a whole
Little.
another.
They're building them up like mad.
And I think
Yeah,
she
we're
started
senior
out at
citizens,
the
yeah.
Daily Herald.
Do you know what
when
else
she was
is a
younger.
more current occupation? Is chef.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Goodness,
Everybody's
yes, everyone's
a
a chef for their grandkids. Everybody
Yes,
has a
and
couple
there's
chefs in the
there's a
family.
demand for them because we have the nursing homes now. We have these hospitals. I mean, even St. Alexis and Alexian Brothers. Now you go and they have these gourmet foods. You
Well,
know.
they call it gourmet.
Yeah.
Well,
But you have the choice. You have a choice
yeah.
of foods.
I remember the first time going to St. Alexis and I walked into their lunchroom. This was about 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is hospital food. Oh my God, I thought I would never eat here. And now at least they have nutritious meals. Like we said at the barn, they have and that's another new occupation that they didn't
Mm-hmm.
have when we were young is people didn't think about how you cooked your food or anything.
No.
You
No.
just
And basically, the food I cooked was good for the heart, meaning it could kill you.
And I was very lucky. I was raised we had really good food. I mean, we had always had fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, very balanced.
in Chicago?
In Chicago.
Which part of Chicago were you
I
from?
lived basically around Irving Park, just a little bit north, a little bit south. I was
Okay.
like Irving and Elston growing up, and then I
Oh.
gradually moved up and down, and then last place I was at Irving and Harlem.
That
I
was
had a little
just
condo
before you
by-
came here then?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I worked at the
Everybody
Carson
worked.
store.
Yeah.
And I used to do a flea market at the outdoor theater.
Yeah, that was my last.
That's
I had a
another
condo before I
occupation. Yes.
came out here.
Yeah. Well, it is remarkable though how many new. Now with technology, it's like everybody they're a program
Coders. and
coders.
such,
Yeah, that we never had
They
any
have
of
them. I
that.
have some on TV. There's 8, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they put me to shame, that's for
Oh,
sure. I
yeah.
can barely use my telephone. Well, we're going to have to call it a day. It's time to say goodbye for now, and we sure would like to see everybody at the barn enjoying themselves along with us, and we hope you have a very happy holiday.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you.
Donna, Laura, and
Mary
Mary Ellen. And
Thank
was your host, Rosemary Colbert. Goodbye.